Hi everybody, Brian here. I'm here with Natalie News. She's with Canine Companions, the leading provider of service dogs in the United States. So Natalie, what can you tell us about Canine Companions?
The mission of Canine Companions is to create opportunities to gain greater independence for people with disabilities by providing highly trained service dogs free of charge.
And if someone's interested in getting a service dog or wanted to donate their time or money, how would they get in touch with Canine Companions?
They'd visit our website at canine.org, where you can find opportunities to donate, to inquire about an application for a service dog, or to learn about volunteer opportunities as well.
A worthy cause and a lovely organization. Thank you, Natalie.
There's always more to the story. Join your hosts, Dr. Eric Shaw, prosecutor Ryan Frank, writer Adrian Bonenberger, and comedian Ryan Connor as they follow up on the most recent episode of Baggage. This is Carry On.
Hey everybody, welcome to Carry On, the supplemental episode to Baggage. This episode, it's just me and Eric, and we got quite a few things to cover. Our last episode was with former air traffic controller Casey, and that episode generated a lot of talk, really from current air traffic controllers and former air traffic controllers. Some criticism, a lot of positive stuff, a lot of support of Casey. I'll stick with the positives. That people enjoyed the episode, glad that the issues of air traffic controllers are getting some airtime, but wanted to correct or highlight some things. And one of the things that was pretty universal is they really wish somebody with more experience had been on the podcast that would know a little bit more of the ins and outs with the union and the FAA and some of the issues. And Casey admitted this too, that he could only speak to the one facility he was at for 3 years while with the FAA. And that number of controllers that reached out to me had said that it really is apples and oranges. You can't say 7 years in the military plus 3 years in the FAA, you have 10 years of controller experience. That's true, but the real problems that people bitch about is specifically with the FAA. Would have loved to have had somebody with 10, 15 years experience. But we ended up hearing, I ended up hearing from a lot of people about more information about why it is people are so reluctant to get on the podcast.
Well, I was going to say, in Casey's defense, like none of the more experienced people were willing to talk. And it's, I think, a sign of the times, again, with finding a librarian and finding a air traffic controller, that people are just so scared right now that they're not willing to talk even anonymously on our little show.
And with good reason, too. I mean, totally justified with what some of the controllers had told me. So you have the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration. That's obviously a wing of the federal government, it's an agency of the federal government, so that the vast majority of places you're going to work, all those facilities, you're going to have to be an FAA employee. There is contract work. Casey talked about it. He did some overseas. And of course, there's the military. But everyone else, the vast majority of controllers are going to be employees of the FAA. Then there's the union. You don't have to be part of the union, but a lot of people are. And the union negotiate for the contract that the FAA has with controllers. So what that means is if you wanted to talk to the public, if you wanted to talk to the press, you would have to get permission from the FAA. And if they didn't give you permission to talk, then at will, you could be terminated. And as Casey was saying, people invest a lot of energy and time into getting certifications, trying to move up the ladder so that you talk to one reporter and you got 10, 15 years in, you could lose your job for talking to the press. So especially in this administration, people are probably less inclined to do that. Then you have the union. The union won't come down on you for talking to the press. However, they're not going to get your back. So you're not going to have union protection by talking to the press. So what you end up having is a situation where you're kind of stuck. Like if you want your job, you either talk anonymously and people are concerned about it getting back to them, no matter how anonymous we try to be.
I love that you're describing us as the press.
Well, I mean, that's true. You know what? We're not podcasters and we're not the press. I don't know what we are. We're a doctor and a lawyer. That's what we are. So that makes sense. I mean, if you have a family and you've put, over a decade into a career, sure, you have some gripes. In fact, that's what some people had said too. You know what? That's great. We're doing the podcast. That's great. You're airing out some of the grievances of air traffic controllers, but nothing's changed up until this point for them screaming into the wind. So it's even less likely they're going to risk talking to somebody and maybe risking their career. That makes sense. I understand that.
I found one thing that he said pretty interesting about that career field, the high floor, low ceiling kind of expression that he used there. And I'd seen a documentary about air traffic controllers too, where it's one of those careers that you train to do it, and there's no transferring this at all. It has no applicability outside of that field. So you're kind of stuck in this job, and they hook you in with a pretty decent paycheck, but then you're kind of capped out. You're never really going to make a whole lot more regardless of what you do. You can't transfer, like an engineer can go to work at a different factory and try something different, do something different. A lawyer can practice different types of law. Even if your training is in prosecution, you could still go and transfer and do something else. Whereas like an air traffic controller can only be an air traffic controller. And that's just kind of a tough one where like you are kind of like, we'll say like velvet handcuffs, where you're kind of trapped in that and you can't necessarily walk away. And then they start doing the stuff where it's like extra hours and more work. And you're just like, okay, got to do it.
A number of controllers contacted me about that. So they wanted some more clarity. They want to make sure people understood. So staffing, as Casey was saying, manpower, major issue. It's way worse than I think he was able to even convey. So 10 years ago, there were 700 less controllers with the FAA than there are now. As you can imagine, air traffic has only increased over that period. In fact, I think they just said 2025 was the most ever passengers transported through airplanes in the United States ever. So you can imagine going in the wrong direction as far as the number of controllers that are needed. And they're in a hole. They're in a deep hole, and it is going to take so long to dig out of it, because this is shocking, these numbers. Even with prior military experience, the FAA will hire people that come from the military, sure, but they just you apply to the FAA, you get hired. After that, then you get qualified. So it kind of doesn't matter. Like everyone's kind of a blank slate. You might have experience, you might not, but everyone has to qualify the same, right? So you take the total number of applicants that try to be an air traffic controller through the FAA, and I won't go through all the different filters, but roughly 1%. 1% of the people that apply to the FAA to be an air traffic controller make it all the way through the process and end up being an air traffic controller. That is a very, very high attrition rate mixed with low number of people that are actually qualified. So it's hard. It's hard for them to get someone from point A to point B, and great, we fill that spot. And it is going to take so many years. And that's why the controllers are just discouraged, because if there's talk from the government about like they're really going to ramp up the hiring process. That's great, but it's still so far away from making up for how deep of a hole they're in that it's going to be a long-term issue. So the manpower is a long-term thing. Most controllers just accept it. Like, this is the way it is. It kind of sucks. And the grind, this is crazy too, because Casey tried to talk about this a little bit, but his situation wasn't nearly as bad as what some controllers had told me about. I'm going to pronounce it wrong. The Rattler system, where most controllers, especially if you're at a 24-hour facility, it works like this. Out of your 2 bid days, you bid for days off, your 2 days off. So that's 5 days you're expected to work. 2 of those will be evenings, 2 of those will be mornings, and 1 of those will be at midnight. And the way you work it, because you have to have a 10-hour break between them, it shifts a little bit so that it satisfies all of those evenings, mornings, midnight. And then universally, pretty much everybody works mandatory overtime 1 day a week. So what you end up doing is you have a 6-day-a-week schedule, and your body never adjusts. And it's like that constantly. Now, try to go to your kids' soccer games. Try to set up a schedule where you pick them up and drop them off from school and all the other things that go on with regular life.
It sounds like when I used to work in the ER, and we would roll forward. You would work like several days, then several evenings, and several nights. And by the time you got back to days, you were just like a broken human.
Now do that for a career for a couple decades.
I'd prefer not.
I mean, I can understand why people are upset. So how do they find themselves in this situation? So let me back up. So that's the long-term issue. The long-term issue that air traffic controllers are bitching about is the manpower situation. But everyone, again, accepts that it's not going to change anytime soon. The short term is pay. Casey talked about level of facilities, level 4 facility, level 12 facility, and how he was at a lower level facility, not getting paid as much, that somebody right out the gates might get to a level 12 facility paying more. That's true, but it's important to understand how these facilities work. You have tower, approach, and center. Approach and tower in some places, if the volume's not too high, they can kind of be combined. They can be one, but center is kind of always its own thing. Centers are always level 10 to 12 facilities. That has to do with volume and complexity. And then towers and approaches, they can be anywhere from 4 up to level 12. You can envision like Chicago O'Hare. That tower is going to be completely separate from the approach because it's so busy, and both of them are going to be level 12s. Super busy, super complex. Then you can have a center. I'm going to make up one. Kansas City, I don't know if that's a busy one or not, but that's not going to be, that center could be not quite as complex or busy as some of the major hubs like Atlanta or Chicago. Does that make sense? So you can have a lower level center and a higher level different facility, tower or approach. So pay is understandably tied to the difficulty, because if you're at a level 12 center, intense, high volume, super important, you probably should be making more money. So that kind of makes sense. Now say that you want to transfer back to what you said. My wife got a job on the other side of the country. I want to transfer, or for whatever reason, my family's sick, I want to go to the other side of the country, something like that. You can put in for it, but with all the staffing shortages, they got to make sure they can fill your spot before you get that transfer approved. So you can get really stuck, not only stuck in your job, stuck in your career, but probably stuck in the facility unless they let you go.
That's not entirely unique to government jobs, though. There's a lot of people that can get that, whether it's Department of like the Forestry Service, like if you have a niche position, like they may not be able to move you across the country just because you want to. So I don't think that's necessarily unique to the FAA, but that is tough. Obviously, it makes it very difficult to have home life and things too, particularly the hours that you're talking there. If that is a 6-day work week of 10-hour shifts, that's brutal. I've done that before, like when I was a paramedic, and even like bad weeks in the ER, like that really wears on you. And I can't imagine doing that indefinitely.
What do time-traveling mathematicians, ancient astronomers, and mad scientists have in common? Well, step into my laboratory at Math Science History, where time bends, ideas spark, equations echo, and the past hums with the electricity of what's to come. Hi, I'm Gabrielle Burchak, your mathematical host and curious conductor of Math Science History. Wind the clock, plug in the coils, and subscribe to Math Science History, where the past lights the way forward, one curious tale at a time.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. What is unique to the FAA is the interplay with the union and the FAA. So that was really interesting to find out some more information about that. There is a lot of internal conflict within the union right now, because there's those that support the union. I think a lot of FAA members, air traffic controllers support the union. They're just frustrated with how they go about negotiating with the government. So anyway, one of the gripes is the contract that the FAA has with air traffic controllers, with the union. And this contract recently got renewed under the Biden administration. So now they're looking at having this contract for 13 years. Unchanged, same contract continued for 13 years. I think they did internal polling. The vast majority of all members of the union really, really disagree with that decision to continue that contract. The thinking was, don't tick off the FAA or the administration because they're friendly. We'll figure everything out later kind of thing. Now you have the Trump administration, which is not going to be a good administration to negotiate with.
I mean, there's people in the administration saying there shouldn't be any public worker unions. So,
right, exactly. So now try to negotiate for a better deal. So that's the short-term issue is pay. You got to get better pay. Regardless of what level of facility you're at, if you're going through this grind and you're dealing with this work schedule, you got to be compensated. And that is a short-term problem that needs to be saved. Manpower is going to, like I said, going to take a long time. Short-term problem, you got to fix the pay. But when you have a contract that you're under and it's tied to the contract through, I think 2029, it's just a little bit of sense of hopelessness of like who's fighting for us is some of the gripes from other members of the union.
Not to get too political, but it's like, oh, you got money to pay ICE agents, but you don't have enough money to pay air traffic controllers. I see how this works.
That's exactly what some of the comments were. Is that understandably where the money's going. You're getting all these tariff money. How come we don't get some of that? And the big bitch, you got this shutdown, and you talk about having the best leverage you're ever going to have is a government shutdown. You got the support of the American public for air traffic controllers, but you're locked into a contract. That was the time to probably do something, and it was just a missed opportunity, is what people are saying. Let's make it worse. There's quite a bit of people that find themselves senior in the air traffic controller community, and all those people are going to be leaving. So it's not going to get better anytime soon. It's going to get worse. Having said all that, I asked air traffic controllers, do they think safety is an issue? Everyone said no. It's still incredibly safe. We were bitching about it, about like, oh God, no one's going to want to fly after this episode, but it's still very safe for a reason I didn't expect. The volume of air traffic is tied to the availability of air traffic controllers, so that if there's a problem and they don't have the staffing, they cancel flights. You're just not going to operate. So it's kind of built into the system. That's not to say they're on some risk, fatigue over time. People make mistakes. As we talked about, some of the more recent issues have nothing to do with air traffic controllers. But, you probably want the person handling really dangerous situations to be well rested and focused. Somebody put it this way. You have two aircraft that are going towards each other, both going over 500 miles an hour. That's a closure rate of 1,000 miles an hour. Things happen very, very quickly like that. So those two blips on the radar, when they show up, they can get close to each other very, very quickly. And when you're dealing with something like a center, it could be, you want somebody that's really focused and can multitask. So anyway, and they have not lowered their standards that many people said, still the same qualifications you have to have.
You talked about that attrition rate. I mean, they're clearly picking the best. It's just we need to pick up the pace on how many of those people we can pick out there.
Right. And somebody had done the math for me, and I can't remember what it was, but it's like if you really ramp up the hiring process, the quality of applicants isn't a problem. You just have like unlimited people applying. Even then, you're still going to fall behind of where they need to be. They needed to be dealing with the staffing issue 10 years ago, so they're behind the times. Some positives: they are increasing the number of schools, and the quality of schools are good. So that's good. That's not equipment. They're dealing with old equipment. People are fine with that. I mean, if that's the thing you have to sacrifice, don't buy us new equipment. Just get us more people.
I mean, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I mean, I can't imagine the technology has evolved all that much in the last 10 years. I could be wrong, but still seems like radar and the computer systems. I don't want to say.
But at the end of the day, even with the best equipment, there is still a human in the loop. You got to have the people, I think, and that's what was told to me is like, great, if we had better equipment, that'd be great, but you still need. I just don't want to be here 6 days a week.
Sure. This leads to a little esoteric conversation with so much stuff, in the media about AI and jobs are going to be like taken away by AI. This sadly seems like one that AI could probably do as well, if not better, than a human being. It's truly just algorithmic and lining up the dots.
That's interesting. No one had brought that up. I hadn't even thought about that. I don't know where the technology is for that.
You'd have to have a human overseeing it and like checking off on those final things and watching it. But this really seems like something a computer could do quite well.
I mean, planes can land themselves now, right?
Yeah, I suppose so.
No, I mean they can't. Like there's some that I think it's becoming somewhat commonplace, especially with the larger airliners, that you don't have to know how to land. You can, put it on auto land and land. That's crazy, isn't it?
Not apples to apples, but also mind-bogglingly awesome. My truck can back up a trailer on its own. That is fucking amazing. I hate backing up my trailer. The fact that that thing can do it on its own is awesome technology. So that said, I think if we can land a plane on our own, or a computer can land a plane and a truck can back up a trailer, I think AI could probably land planes on its own.
Yeah, I mean, technology, man. I mean, it didn't prevent me from turning directly into my coworker's Tesla. You would think a little beep or something would have been nice there, but yeah, our technology's coming a long way.
Whoops.
Yeah, they are not cheap to fix, by the way. I don't know. Some other points. There's a mandatory retirement age of 56. I didn't know that. You can't be a 57-year-old air traffic controller in the FAA.
I think this has been one of our most informative episodes.
Dude, I learned so much from this episode. And there's probably a bunch. I know there's a bunch of stuff that guys told me that, this was one, like the nuts and bolts of how it works. You get in the plane, it taxis, ground control gets you onto the runway, taxis you off. Tower has you take off. Approach takes it from there until you get out of the area of that local airport. Then you get transferred to a center. Now you're at 17,000 feet or above. You're probably with a center the entire time until you start to descend into your airport you're going to. Between East Coast, West Coast, 4 or 5 different centers you get handed off to until you do the reverse. You contact approach at wherever, LAX or something like that. And then you get handed off to tower and then ground control, and you get off the plane. So you're talking to, what is that? Potentially like 8 or 9 different air traffic controllers, at least, dealing with all the different facilities you have to get transferred to. So the pilots are, not, they're busy talking to people that you don't see. That's kind of interesting.
The only, I would say, downside of the air traffic controller episode and now this follow-up was like, it wasn't necessarily fully like in theme with our show. I was really expecting and hoping, like, hoping's not the right way of putting this, but there'd be some stories of like some close calls or a crash or something dramatic, and like, something that he took away. And I think he's just salty about his career options and the union. But
for sure, I was expecting a lot more.
It was an absolutely fascinating conversation. It was just a little bit of askew of what we normally do.
Yeah, I was hoping for that too, of a bunch of close call stories and stuff like that. I guess it's good that there aren't that many out there, maybe.
Now that we think about it, stepping back a little bit, it probably is good that he doesn't have emotional damage from things, and we don't win our air traffic controllers with those sort of problems.
We're going to move on to other topics on future episodes with different guests, but still, people don't hesitate to contact us, thebaggagepodcast@gmail.com, and let us know like stories. We'll still share them on future episodes. But there has to be, my local airport 6 months ago, 2 planes, barely avoided colliding. It just didn't make the news. I bet you that stuff happens. I don't know about regularly. I think it happens. I just think it happens.
I'd let that the one, the death investigator, and we talked about the plane that went down, and they were talking to the guy the whole time. That must have been pretty rough on those controllers.
Yeah. I would love to hear from a controller with an emergency situation. I was the controller that handled the DCA crash or something like that. That would be great.
The Miracle on the Hudson or something like that.
Yeah. I'd love to hear from those people. Obviously anonymously. We could do it like this too. I told multiple people, everybody that talked to me were like, it's very, very important that you don't even use my alias that I'm using to talk to you. So I'm going to honor that. So anybody who wants to talk to us, still reach out. Again, thebaggagepodcast@gmail.com. We'll share those stories like I'm sharing now, so no one will know who it came from. I'll make it obscure. Have you ever known any air traffic controllers?
Do I? No.
Yeah, have you ever met one? I don't know any air traffic controllers.
No, because they fucking work all the time.
That's true. They probably don't have a social life. I mean, it's not. I got to tell you, it doesn't look very inviting. Like with everything I've heard, it'd be like, man, maybe there's a good time to be an air traffic controller, but it sounds super, super stressful. and a risk that you invest into it and maybe you get the spot you want and then you're like kind of stuck there. I don't know.
It doesn't seem like, and it's not one like you don't hear kids like growing up being like, I want to be an air traffic controller. Like it's not a glamorous job. And it's not something, in particular, the fact that you have to seek it out as strongly as you do and work so hard to get there. It is just an odd little niche one, isn't it?
Yeah. That's a few of the points that the air traffic controllers I spoke to wanted to make sure we pointed out that maybe wasn't conveyed in the last episode. And I really do hope it changes, but universally, everyone's like, yeah, they're not holding their breath anytime soon. Hopefully some politicians are listening to this and they're not. But anyway, hopefully something changes. So that was one of our regular guest episodes. The next episode we have coming up, I'm pretty excited about. As regular listeners will notice, every so often we collaborate with a charity organization, and the next one's going to be pretty cool. It's with Lika Foundation, which raises money and provides medical backpacks for battlefield medics in Ukraine. And we are going to hear from one of those Ukrainian battlefield medics next time. Live, well, not live, but we're going to hear from Ukraine. They're going to talk to us from Ukraine. So that should be pretty interesting. I'm
excited. That is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's going to be in the middle of the night for me and you, Eric, while we are recording that. But it'll be worth it. That'll be fun. Ryan Connor obviously couldn't be here tonight because he's on the road. He's on the road touring right now. He's got shows coming up in, I know, Roanoke and Vienna. I'm actually going to the Vienna show. That'll be fun. But check out his tour dates on ryanconnorcomedy.com. Check out his book, The Party. And I think it's going to do it for this episode. See you guys next time. Music for Baggage provided by Quincy Ledbetter. You can find his stuff at qledbetter.com. Graphics provided by Megan Weaver. You can find her at meganweaverart.com. Special thanks to our premium members for their support. You can become a premium member by clicking subscribe in your Apple Podcast app or by visiting thebaggagepodcast.com/support to sign up or to gift a membership to someone. A percentage of all proceeds go to charity. If you have any questions, comments, or a good story to share, please email us at thebaggagepodcast@gmail.com.
Hey listeners, quick question. Do you know what extraterrestrial radio signals and a mushroom from Texas have in common? Or what a number station is and why it's so haunting and creepy? If you're intrigued by those questions, Midnight Facts for Insomniacs has the answers.
Join us, Duncan and Shane, hosts, comedians, and best friends on hilarious deep dives into obscure facts from science, history, and pop culture.
So whether you're nocturnal or just a fan of laughing and learning, we'll keep you entertained. Find Midnight Facts for Insomniacs wherever you're listening to this show.